Hello, we're looking at lesson 1-4, properties of real numbers. And our objective is to identify and use properties of real numbers. And our essential understanding is that relationships that are always true for real numbers are called properties, which are rules used to rewrite and compare expressions. Two algebraic expressions are equivalent expressions if they have the same value for all values of the variables. The following properties show expressions that are equivalent for all real numbers. So, properties of real numbers. So these are A, B, and C are any real numbers. Commutative property of addition and multiplication. And it basically says changing the order of the additives does not change the sum, or changing the order of the factors does not change the product. So when I add A plus B is also equal to B plus A. I've just changed the order. The same thing for here. For multiplication, I have A times B is equal to B times A. The same thing here. Associative property of addition and multiplication says changing the grouping of the additives does not change the sum, and changing the grouping of the factorings does not change the factors. So for addition, I have A plus B, parentheses, plus C, and if I just change where my parentheses are, it's going to still be equal to each other, and the same thing is true for the example. For multiplication, again, if I just change the grouping, it's the same thing. So one thing that I want you to take notice is that I'm only dealing with addition and multiplication. Subtraction does not hold true, and division does not hold true. All right. Now let's take a look at identity properties of addition and multiplication. So when I'm talking about identity, that means that I'm getting the exact same thing back out. It's like a mirror image. So when I have addition, my identity is 0. So A plus 0 gives me A again. When I have multiplication, 1 is my identity. So A times 1 gives me A. There's also a 0 property of multiplication because when I multiply anything times 0, I get 0 back out. And then there's also a multiplicative property of -1. So when I multiply anything times -1, I get that same thing, but it's the negative of that value. So identifying properties. So what property is illustrated by each statement? So 42 times 0 equals 0. That is my 0 property of multiplication. We can see that by looking back up here. My 0 property of multiplication. Then here I have, when the parentheses is a giveaway, and I have addition. So I know that all I'm doing is changing the grouping. And so that means the associative property of addition is present here. And then 10x plus 0 equals 10x. That's an identity property of addition. So let's look at the guidance now. It says what property is illustrated by each statement. So 4 times 1 equals 4x. So I'm just getting this 4x back again. So this is the identity property of multiplication. Here I'm doing grouping. My grouping has changed. And I'm parentheses, so I'm addition. So that's the associative property of addition. But as you can also see, my square root of y, z, and my z square root y, those are the things that have changed. So my parentheses really didn't change. I didn't really change my my positioning, my grouping. I'm sorry, I didn't change my grouping. But these two things changed. The square root of y plus z switch with z plus the square root of y. So that means that we're really dealing with, and I'm sorry I misspoke earlier, but I'm really dealing with the commutative property of addition. So I hope this helps.